Hello everyone, Nick here from the Sage Scrolls, and today we're looking at another RPG horror story. This one is centered around someone who goes and crosses the big pond between Britain and the US and finds some differences with one of the people he was visiting. They start getting pretty bad and it ends with a bit of spitting on someone else, so we'll have to see what happens. Let's get into it. This post is entitled, My American Cousin, who I had met for the first time, spat in my face during D&D. Posted by user/Monsieur Nothing. Names obviously changed. This happened early last year. So I'm from the UK, and I was visiting relatives who live in Arizona for the first time. This was also the first time I had ever been to the US too. One of the relatives was a cousin I knew relatively well because we had talked a bit on Facebook and such, and we are both interested in D&D. He's the good one in this story. His younger brother I did not know very well at all, and he seemed very reclusive. Regardless, I arrive in Arizona with my family and meet with good cousin, we will call him Steve. Steve was happy to see me and we immediately hit it off. Bad cousin, we'll call him Max, didn't seem to be much interested in me or my other family members who had come all this way to see him. Everyone else we met in the family, Steve's mum and dad, plus 2 sisters, were very amiable and open. Steve suggests we play D&D. He would DM and he's been planning for when I visit. Him, 2 of his friends, and Max would play. I was excited. Max still seemed very quiet and aloof. The day before the game, Max finally has a proper first conversation with me. More than just a nod and an affirmative grunt. He's 16. I'm in my 20s. He starts asking me questions about what life is like in the UK. His questions are very odd. I rather immediately knew that his entire knowledge of the UK came from films and internet memes. He wholeheartedly believed some common stereotypes with no nuance or investigation on his part. He was surprised my teeth were in good condition, and that I didn't need a license to buy a screwdriver and tools, or something weird. He also appeared to believe that we were overrun by socialist goons, and our government was a left-wing cabal. 10 plus years of Tory austerity being beyond his knowledge. I was wise enough to not get into a stupid political argument with a 16-year-old kid. I tried not to be antagonistic and passively corrected a few of the weirder assumptions he had. I did not mention very much about the faults of the US as some sort of retaliation, but he claimed that free ambulances in Europe were unfair. I need not say how ridiculous I find it to pay $4K or more for an ambulance in the US. I'm also chronically ill. I depend on our health service in the UK and a welfare safety net, trip to US funded by my American relatives who wanted to meet me and other family. I will also say that I am not at all patriotic. I am plenty embarrassed by things that go on in Britain, and I am a harsh critic. But Max's ideas about what life is like in the UK were conspiracy theories and pure nonsense, which I simply said weren't true. Max also said some strange, obvious things about the weak, and I had no energy to get into some long argument with him. I, of course, find all of this offensive and rude. Again, passively and as politely as I could, I calmly dismissed some of his wacky ideas and went to speak more with Steve and the rest of the family. Max gives me daggers. Red flags abound. Later, I see inside Max's room only briefly, as his door was open in the hallway. He had various flags on his walls, a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, and some other things I didn't recognize. I decided not to enter his room, of course. I am made more wary. I tentatively ask Steve about Max. He says that Max is a bit quiet and that he finds him confusing, but he knows how to avoid arguments with him, and so they don't have many or any real bust-ups. My gut feels bad. I am a bit baffled how Steve and the others are lovely and kind and welcoming, while Max is this brooding creep. Finally, we are all playing D&D in the garage. Steve's friends come over. Both of them are polite and were fun to be around. Steve has been great the entire holiday. We are all excited to play, and we have character sheets ready. I'm playing a Tabaxi monk. Steve has a DMPC who is a human wizard to help fill out the party. Max is a Kenku rogue, because of course he'd pick rogue. The other two friends are two elven siblings, one cleric and one paladin. Max's Kenku immediately doesn't like my Tabaxi as we meet in the tavern, of course. Max doesn't like cats, and nor does he like furries. I am not a furry. I just like cats, and monks, and this was a character I played in various one-shot games based off my actual pet cat. My Tabaxi had barely even spoken before Max's Kenku showed his distaste. Steve, as his wizard, thankfully settled him down, and we could soon begin our adventure. The party were all being paid to find and kill a monster in the woods that had been pestering the small town. Steve's friends look at me somewhat concerned, likely sensing Max's abrasiveness, but we soon carried on. Fast forward an hour or so after searching through the forest, and we are finally confronting the monster. It is a strange homebrew abomination that looks like a giant mutated boar that Steve has created, tended to by a cult of goblins who serve it. The rest of us have some fun minor roleplay with our characters before this, and Max is even being nice to Steve as his Kenku, but aloof from me. The fight begins and I roll okay for initiative. Max rolls low and seems annoyed, but we are all getting into it. The fight is great, with various goblin archers, and the giant boar has some cool abilities. Max's Kenku gets a few good hits in at the start, but then the dice gods start to disfavor him. He's not hitting, and he's eventually downed by a goblin archer. The archers are no trouble for me, monks deflect missiles. The boar is tough though, and our cleric and paladin can't reach Max's downed rogue, for fear of provoking opportunity attacks. I could get to Max, and I have one healing potion. But it's my turn, and I could, with some good rolls, kill the boar this round. If I don't attack and go to heal Max, the boar will likely kill our cleric and paladin the very next turn. Steve's DMPC wizard has been providing range support this whole time, and is too squishy to risk himself. I attack the boar. I land one crit and use a flurry of blows, and the boar is killed. Everyone is happy, because it was the boar's turn next, and the cleric and paladin were sure to be done. Max, of course, isn't happy, and he finally snaps. He's screaming at me, throwing insults and abuse my way, some of it specifically mocking my health conditions too, cystic fibrosis and some other stuff, as well as calling me a limey duck. Steve is shocked, and so are his friends. The paladin uses lay on hands on Max's Kenku, but Max doesn't care. He thinks I'm selfish for not using my one healing potion on him, and for taking the glory. He even claims my dice are weighted. Never mind that Steve and I have been sharing dice, and I haven't even been rolling amazingly. I got that one crit the whole game. And he reaffirms his hatred for cats. Steve asks Max to settle down, but he doesn't care. He's ignoring him and screaming his venom at me. He finally coughs and spits a good chunk of phlegm right in my face, before storming off while still shouting, saying I'm a stupid British cat. Steve and his friends look shocked and upset. Steve goes off to find Max, and I stay with his friends, after wiping Max's phlegm off my face with a tissue. His friends said they knew Max was a little abrasive, but they didn't know he was so toxic. Of course, they say they won't share Max's perverse political beliefs, and they say they think I've been polite and decent the whole time, and don't understand Max's hatred. Steve comes back and apologizes, and says he's told their mother, who's now having stern words with Max. Apparently, Max started to hurl abuse at my other family members for the crime of being limeys. Nobody was happy with him, and he remained confined to his room for the rest of our time there. My family and I later say our goodbyes, and Steve and the others apologize for Max. I still talk to Steve, and we have been playing some games on Roll20 with his friends, and a couple people I know too. Steve and I now joke about that night that Max spat on me, and he hasn't played D&D with Max since. Steve has said that Max now goes to see a therapist, and much of his trouble has come from being radicalized online, something I sensed immediately during my first conversation with him. Steve and his family never appeared to be neglectful or malicious people, and have always looked loving and open. Both Steve and I are sure that it's Max's online habits that are to blame for his behavior, as they would seemingly not come from his home life. Steve spends little time online and is close with his parents. And Max has always been quiet and introspective, and it's clear he also has some mental health issues, entirely absent from his brother. Life is bedeviling. Anyway, I won't be returning to the States anytime soon with the pandemic. I've been inside since March. So, I am not at risk from being spat on. I hope this year has been kind on Max, and that he is doing better. Steve should be a good influence. He's a good man. So I only hope that Max listens to him, and less to whatever forums he frequents. Alright, well, to me, this one seems pretty cut and dry. There's not much advice to be given in terms of rules or ways to talk things out. He already figured it out, and I appreciate that you're wishing well for him, that it's not entirely his intentional fault, if that makes sense, to be so rude, abrasive, and toxic. Now, I have political opinions just as anyone does, and I can kind of see a bit of right versus left here, especially with that Tories comment. I'm American, so I don't know much about them, I just know they're on the right side. And this isn't a political channel, so I'm not going to try and say something's right or wrong. But it's important that no matter your political beliefs, you should be able to get along with other people. Just as you might with someone from another culture, which I guess he couldn't, UK to America. You gotta be able to get along with someone who has different opinions than you. So, I hope that therapy's working out for him, I hope he's learning. Maybe he's opening up to some new stuff, and maybe sometime in the future you guys can play another game together where he'll be nice. The cats one, I don't quite get that. I mean, I'm not a pet person in general, but hey, a tabaxi's still a cool race. In conclusion, you handled it well. You have a much better temper than I would have if I got spat on, that's for sure. Well guys, this has been it for this RPG horror story. If you enjoyed and you want to see more Dungeons & Dragons content, such as these narrated stories, or anything else, make sure you suggest it, subscribe, let me know what you want. I'm new here, and I love getting some input and feedback. With all that being said, I am Nick from the Sage Scrolls, and I'll see y'all in the next video.